Let's take a look at what's been happening in the city of Minneapolis. Tensions still high. Demonstrators once again out in the streets 1 week after a woman was shot by an ICE agent. Donald Trump now threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act. That would allow him to deploy troops in Minneapolis as these protests continue. To get a sense of how people in Minneapolis are feeling, we're joined now by journalist and radio host Jason DeRUSHA. Jason, you've just finished your radio show. You had listeners call in. What have you been hearing about this issue?
Well, Ian, people in Minneapolis are fatigued. They're tired. We have been the center of so many national news stories. And much like the good people of Canada, we like to sort of be ignored for most of the time. We don't need this sort of attention. It is fatiguing. People are very much polarized, though. There are many hardliners who believe that immigration has been allowed to run amok for too long and that there needs to be enforcement. And there are other people who say, we believe in enforcement, but these tactics and the idea of the Insurrection Act, that the federal government would be essentially coming in with armed forces that have the ability to arrest people, is certainly not where we want to be.
It's been very interesting to watch all of this unfold, particularly in the last week in Minneapolis. Like what we're seeing in the news from Canada is obviously, a rush to judgment by the White House as to, that ICE shooting last week, but then extremely strong language from the mayor of Minneapolis. I mean, he seems fearless and, I just wonder, for people in Minneapolis, how is that playing, how the mayor is reacting?
No, people love it when their own team uses harsh rhetoric, and for everyone else, they want the volume to be turned down. So it is difficult to get a real sense as to where the moderates or the people in between are. But I will tell you that for many of us who do believe in strong enforcement of the law, who believe in public safety, but also want our city to function as normal and want visitors from Canada to come back to Minneapolis again. We want that to continue. We know that this is not helpful. And so figuring out a way, part of what's happening, we live in this social media environment where, as you said, the White House and the investigators on this case were pronouncing judgment on social media 2 hours after the shooting happened last week. So what you have is you have two freight trains that are going down the track headed right towards each other. One is the president of the United States. The other is the governor of our state. And the question is, does anybody have the guts to pull on the brakes and calm things down? Because this is not sustainable for our community.
And tell me a little bit about Minneapolis, again, a city that a number of Canadians visit and have visited, but a lot of other Canadians have never been there before. These protests aside, like this kind of, chaos, to the extent it's chaos aside, what's life like in Minneapolis?
It is an incredible place where you have beautiful lakes, a 10-minute bike ride from the business center of downtown Minneapolis. You have theater, you have world-class restaurants. It is really a wonderful place where people are very loving people. And so in this moment, just like when you see a tornado, when you see floods, when you see any other sort of challenge, and we've had our share. George Floyd, of course, the epicenter of that racial reckoning happened in our community. There was a school shooting a couple of blocks from where Nicole Goode was shot last week. We had one of our governmental leaders assassinated in her own home. These are not the things that we think of that make Minneapolis and Minnesota special. But as you know, in Canada, when you end up on the world stage, it's usually not because you have a really incredible restaurant that people should know about.
Boy, as you go through the list of things, I had actually forgotten some of those moments. It's been a rough few years in Minneapolis. And I mean, do you have any sense of what the next week or two will bring?
The hope is that some work can happen behind closed doors, right? That all of the posturing that's going on in public can calm down. So when the leaders say we need to turn the temperature down, what I would say to them is you need to turn the temperature down. You need to get in a room and do some stuff that everybody doesn't have to hear about and figure out a path forward, because I do think there is a path forward for this. But the current pace and the current sort of reality cannot continue.
I'll have to listen to your show online. It sounds like it'll be a lively and interesting conversation. Jason DeRUSHA is a journalist and radio host in Minneapolis. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Ian.